Hello, and thank you for tuning in. If you are returning, thank you very, very much for coming back. And if this is your first time, I appreciate you stopping by. The next project that I have in mind is quite technical. So we are starting out in the office for some pre-planning, and because of its technicalities, we have got the colored pencils. The project isn't that technical. What we are planning on doing is adding some lights to the bumpers of the truck, and I wanted to do a schematic real quick to figure out the odds and ends of the wiring. We have a 6-panel switch box that we are using, which hooks up to a relay center that will go in the engine bay, and it has our 6 spots. Now, we are going to be adding 2 rear lights, and we're going to be adding 3 lights to the front, this one being dual function. Each of the lights are going to be hooked up with a waterproof connector, and I'm going to be making separate wire systems for each outside the vehicle in the loom, so that way when I put them on the truck they will be ready to go. Now, running from the box inside the engine bay, I'm going to need 1 line that powers these lights, and because this light is dual function, I will need 2 separate lines coming from that. Then I will need a separate line powering the rear backup lights. This will have to have, of course, its ground. And then for the front, my plan is to run a single ground lead that will hook up all the lights. Now we will be taking up 1, 2, 3, 4 panels of our switch. The switch is a simple hookup to our batteries, positive, negative. So the next step for this will be measuring the distance for everything, and I'm going to add 6 to 8 inches per measurement to give additional room for error and for cutting these wires. But this is the schematic we're going to go with, as crude as it is. Our next step is going to be measuring, and after we measure, we will get our box and our control panel installed. We will build our wires and we will label them so that we do not get confused on what's what, and then we are going to install it. Additionally, with installing this light in the middle of my front bumper, The light is about 21 inches long, but my mounting holes are 14 inches. So I am going to have to build a mounting bracket that is drilled for the bumper as well as drilled for the light. Then I will mount the bracket to the bumper, then I'll mount the light to the bracket. Everything going in the front is spot. Everything going in the rear will be flood. The only things in the front that aren't are flood are these two here that are hooked up on the light bar. The light bar is an integrated white light and amber light, and the amber light and the white light, like I said, are controlled separately. The amber light are mostly going to be for identification and visibility in high dust areas. I'm not going to rely on them so much for illumination. That's what the other lights are for, but these are just for my safety. And as I said, our next step will be to measure, and then we will start installing and building our wire connectors. Back in the garage now, we have to grab our measurements. We're going to add a little bit, but once we get those, we can start working on our wire looms, getting those completed, and then we'll start the install. This is the kit we'll be installing today. We will have our 2 additional 3.5-inch spots for the front, 2 3.5-inch floods for the rear. We're adding the light bar that has the spot, flood, and amber combo. We have the control box, which is going to be controlling everything, and our various wire connectors, wire and wire loop. Each light will be getting its own individual waterproof connector, and we'll get measuring, and then we'll start getting all this stuff installed. Our waterproof connectors up to our wires, we're going to be using these little heat shrink devices. They have heat shrink, waterproofing, glue, and solder all in one. Can't use a flame, gotta use a heat gun, but they provide a pretty reliable connection so far. So we'll get these burned on, give you a little sample of how it's done, and then we'll continue working on the rest of the connectors and the wires. Completed product. You have the wires are soldered now, and then they are waterproofed. So we will continue on. Got our 2 ends completed for our wiring. Now we need to hook the main set of lines that's going to be going to the control box up to our ancillary that will be hooking up to our additional fog lights. And for that, we're going to use some simple splicing T connectors. So we've got the male portion on here for our ancillary part. We can go ahead and clip the female connector splicers onto it. Positive and negative. Perhaps. And we have our completed rear wiring. We'll knock out the front and then we'll be back for install. Before we get too far into this, we're going to test out where we've gone so far. Got the rear wiring loom that we set up, and I have it hooked up to my spotlights that we'll be putting back there, my floodlights. So we'll make sure we get light onto those before we carry on too much further, because we don't want to put it on the truck and then have problems. So positive and negative, and it looks like our wiring is good for that. Tested the spots individually. They work on the connectors we put on. We'll give them a test later for the actual wiring harness. Go ahead and test out our light bar. Make sure that the connections are going to be working for that. Red should be our spotlights coming on. Both of those working. And this one, our black, should be our black and black. We gotta have a ground. Gotta have ground. So now we should have our ambers coming on. Look at that. So we at least know all our connections are working so far. We're going to continue that front loom, and then we'll get it installed. So optimistically, the hard part is done. We have all our wire connectors complete. We have all our lighting connectors complete and everything works. The next step is to pull the truck back in the garage, and we're going to start hooking up some electronics. Let's give it a shot. First thing we're going to do, anytime we're working with the electricity, is get the negative cable taken off the battery. We don't want to ruin any of our electronics. And what we have going in here is a pre-wired, pre-set up lighting system. It's got the command station inside that has all our switches to turn lights on and off. Out here in the box, we have all our relays and all our fuses that we need. We have our lead that goes to our command box, our negative, our power, and we have an ACC wire that we're going to be hooking up. Our outlets for our 6 light systems. And what I'm going with right now is this is probably going to be mounting right on top of the lid for the fuse box. For me right now, it's just the easiest location for it, and I don't want to drill into the truck, and I don't have that much more space. But here, it'll be out of the way, and we'll have everything hooked up. So we're going to start running our wires and see what we come up with. Save you some time. Got the relay box hooked up. Done a couple nice drill points so I can still see all my fuse diagrams. And then for the accessory switch that we need to hook up, I went and got a little add a fuse, add a circuit, and we found an ignition on-off fuse, and we're just going to plug it in, and that's going to be our ACC power. So I'll have that running underneath the fuse box. We'll work on getting the rest of this wired up, and then we'll go into getting our different lengths of wire for the front and the back, and hopefully when we're done, we'll have buttons that turn lights on. Of the power box. Didn't turn out too bad. Tried to get the wires as tidied up as I could over there. But overall, it's not too ugly. Comes out pretty clean. Next step is going to be screwing the light bulbs on and plugging those in. So I'll see you guys when I get back. We got it done. Took some time getting the wiring cleaned up and tucked up out of the way. But here are the lights. The best part about it is it really fills out the bumper. No matter what type of light you're putting on, if you have an aftermarket bumper that has light spaces in it, it just totally changes the look of everything once those spaces are filled with lights. So give a quick run through right now of how the lights look when they're turning on and off. Here's where we managed to get the controller placed. When you have ACC power on, the lights are green. When we activate our lights, they turn yellow to let you know that they are on. And then the power is controlled with the key. We have the key off. Turns off, so we don't have to worry about any of our battery. I think the lights give the truck a great overall look. They will be very useful, of course, when we are going off trail in the dark. The next step for me is just going to be aiming these things the right way so that I can see with them. And again, this is not the way to do any of this. This is just one way that I did it in my garage. And I'm sure you're going to be able to do this in your garage to your own style. Thanks a lot for stopping by.